If you're just joining us, you're watching the Daily Roundup on your home channel, NBC1. Namibia has welcomed the International Court of Justice's landmark advisory opinion regarding Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory. The court confirmed that Israel's occupation and its related policies in the occupation of Palestinian territory are illegal, discriminatory, and violate the right of Palestinian people to self-determination. To gain further insight, we are joined by Gladys Pickering, the Executive Director at the Ministry of Justice. Very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
All right. First things first, what are the key legal implications of the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion of Israel and the international community?
So some of the key implications, of course, are the first thing that we must realize is that this is an advisory opinion and that it is not a binding decision taken in terms of the UN Charter. Specifically, we would have had, if it was a binding decision, you would have had such a decision taken by the Security Council of the UN. This is an advisory opinion issued by the ICJ on the matter, and therefore states are not, it's not of a binding nature. And although it has persuasive power, and states should, those who do respect international law and who subscribe to the rule of international law as a member of the international community, states should heed to this advisory opinion, and therefore states should implement the recommendations made by the court. So that is the first one on the legality of the opinion. And you will see, or those who have read the opinion would have noticed that the court has advised in its opinion that member states work with the UN bodies to ensure that the recommendations are implemented, and also that states must take measures in terms of the opinion to to distinguish between their dealings, between Israel and the occupied territories. And also the crux of the opinion is that the court has indicated that Israel must, with immediate effect, withdraw from the occupied territories and cease its unlawful occupation of the Palestinian territories. The other important consequence is also that all states are advised to adhere to the international humanitarian law as is applicable in the situation of Palestine.
Very well. So how then does Namibia's historical experience, Gladys, when it comes to apartheid, subjugation, the influence and its stance on Israel's policies on the occupied Palestinian territory?
So in terms of our own history, as we all know, Namibia was also an occupied territory, occupied by the apartheid South Africa regime. And the occupation was also illegal, as is the case now between Palestine and Israel. And in 1971, specifically, the International Court of Justice also pronounced itself on the occupation by apartheid South Africa of the Southwest African territory at the time. And as a result of that advisory opinion, states were able to move resolutions forward to the Security Council that has binding power. And as a result of those resolutions, Namibia was able to have free and fair elections, and we were able to obtain our independence. So yet again, coming back to the situation and the similarities between the situations faced by Namibia and now Palestine, both Namibia and Palestine has experienced unlawful occupation by an occupying power. In both Namibia and Palestine, apartheid policies were applied, and in the case of Palestine, those policies are still applied to oppress the people In both instances, both Namibia and Palestine, the right to self-determination, as is guaranteed in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, are violated or were violated in the case of Namibia. So there are many similarities between the situation experienced in terms of occupation, oppression, apartheid policies being applied to the people of Palestine, which we can relate to as a state. And like Palestine, Namibia has also, other states have intervened on behalf of Namibia to in the International Court of Justice to plead for the case of Southwest Africa, Namibia at the time. And that is why we feel so strong in our solidarity and support for Israel, that we, for Palestine, that we have to stand up against the apartheid policies of Israel perpetrated against the Palestinian people. There are many similarities, and therefore Namibia is in a very, very special position to fight on behalf of the Palestinian people in platforms such as the International Court of Justice.
Very well. And now understanding the similarities between the two countries, and of course Namibia now having to stand, having a special stance, like you just mentioned. Can you elaborate perhaps on the Namibia's role, rather, and the contributions in presenting the case to the International Court of Justice?
Yes. So in the submissions that Namibia made, first written submissions made to the court when states were invited to do so, and then afterwards making oral submissions based on those written submissions. The case that Namibia put before the court was actually, in two respects, it was very peculiar, because we raised the issues of apartheid, and apartheid policies being perpetrated against the Palestinian people. And then secondly, we had the contribution that we were able to make, as I said earlier, was based on our own experience as a state, whose independence came about as a result of and as a direct consequence of interventions through the International Court of Justice. So what we have done is, through our submissions, we have requested the court to pronounce itself on those apartheid policies that Israel is implementing in the occupied territories, which the court has done. We have also requested the court to pronounce itself on the illegalities of the occupation, in that the occupation or the control over the territories were gained unlawfully through annexation by the use of force. And the court also pronounced itself very strongly on that point. We went a step further, and we also asked the court to pronounce itself on the dealings between states and Israel, in differentiating between Israel and the occupied territories. And the court has also pronounced itself on that point specifically, in calling upon states to differentiate in their dealings between Israel and the occupied territories, and also pronouncing itself on the occupation that is illegal, and therefore the court has requested Israel to stop its occupation of the Palestinian territory with immediate effect.
Very well. And going forward, Gladys, how do you envision the United Nations General Assembly, as well as the Security Council, implementing the recommendations of the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion?
So going forward, what is possible, what can be done, as I've said in my introduction, this is an advisory opinion, so it does not have any binding power, but it has persuasive power, and states can now use this opinion to formulate resolutions which can be tabled in the UN General Assembly and also in the UN Security Council. We are all aware of the challenges and the obstacles that we are facing in terms of the composition of the Security Council, especially with reference to the permanent the countries occupying the permanent 5 position in the Security Council. But definitely going forward, states, including Namibia, we must table resolutions containing exactly these recommendations by the ICJ in moving moving forward on putting some more pressure on Israel, and hopefully soon we will have a binding resolution by the Security Council that will bring an end to the occupation of the Palestinian territories by Israel.
Absolutely. Gladys, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us this evening. Of course, we are looking forward to seeing that binding resolution, coming to a close and, of course, happening as fast as it can. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're still watching the Daily Roundup with more interviews coming your way right here. Do stay with us.